Can AI generate music that's worth listening to? Welcome to the AI Show with John Koetsier. So music is one of our oldest art forms, right? Art is creative. We think of people as being creative. We don't necessarily think of machines as being creative or computers as being creative. What about AI? Well, it might surprise you. I've actually been listening to AI-generated music for much of the last few days. I want to bring in the CEO of FM, Edward Balassian, to talk a little bit about a new app that he's created that is AI-generated music. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. Tell us what you built.
Well, Amy is, as you described, an AI that generates music. We took a little bit of a different approach than the typical generative music systems out there. We're not trying to replace human creativity with Amy. Instead, we're trying to augment it. Artists still create the beats, if you will, the small phrases or words and sentences to tell a story, and Amy puts those together to create a musical experience.
Very, very interesting. Talk to us about why you decided to build this.
Well, for me as a fan, I love listening to music, and for me, music is usually an experience, more so than it is me wanting to listen to this song or that song. That's part of it. The other part of it was I've been around DJs and producers a lot, and I realized that a lot of what they do is tedious when they're in a studio, putting together, arranging music. The creative part of it is coming up with the beats, if you will, the little bits and pieces of music that go together to make what you hear in the music that Amy's producing. So Amy is really a combination of those two things, creating a musical experience for the listener and also giving artists a way to take all the content they've created and provide them a new platform for expressing that.
Well, I think we have to listen to a little bit of it. And as I mentioned off the top, I mean, I've been listening to FM for big chunks of the last few days, and I actually found it really, really good to work to. So this is FM. I'm going to put it right here. So right now, most of what I hear from FM is kind of electronic type music. Are you thinking of branching out beyond that at some point?
Yeah, we chose electronica for a couple reasons. One, that genre specifically has perfected the art of long form music. Most music that you hear today, pop, rock, is geared around the back in the radio days where songs had to be 3 minutes in length. Electronica grew up in house parties where you'd play music for hours at a time. So the producers and DJs have techniques that keep you engaged over long periods of time in a way that other genres don't.
Yeah.
So we started with that genre. But one of the really exciting things about Amy is later this summer, we're going to announce our artist marketplace.
Oh.
And in addition to, I think I just announced it actually.
I think you did.
I think I did. Oops. Well, anyhow, we're going to be announcing artists that we're working with later this summer, and they'll release artist packs, and you'll be able to go into Amy, listen to our background music, or you'll be able to go pick your favorite artist, and Amy will play their beats with an AI trained by that artist.
That is super interesting because you can imagine each artist has their own unique sound, what they do more of than somebody else. And now you're actually training an AI to be generative based on that source work.
That's right. And we take their creative content. So it's really empowering for an artist as opposed to compromising their creativity and their artistry.
Very, very cool. So what AI technologies did you use?
Well, we're specifically using TensorFlow for the exercising of the model, but we have some proprietary tools for how we train the model. One of the things that we've been successful at doing is figuring out how to train Amy so it can play long-form electronica without getting into copyright issues that are kind of plaguing the AI world right now. So we feel like we've made some big steps in that regard. We're also able to train Amy at an order of magnitude better than just feeding in song by song and teaching a system. Other systems out there right now, for example, require a lot of processing to succeed. Amy runs on this.
Yes.
So you get your own private AI on your phone when Amy's playing, and that's kind of a departure from the traditional systems.
So that's really interesting because you're using my cycles, my CPU cycles to run it. It's local, it's on the edge, if you want to put it that way. What made you decide to use that model?
Well, a couple things. One, we wanted this music to be played for you, not at you. And having the AI local and the machine learning local is going to give us the ability to do real-time adaptation and personalization of the music. We're just beginning to scratch the surface of that with what we have today. So that's one of the reasons why we chose that. The other one is, as you just said, all the processing happens on the edge. So we're massively scalable because adding a new one of these costs us nothing.
As long as the cost of customer acquisition is nothing, yes, I agree with you. Interesting. Now, I notice as I use it, there's occasionally when I start it up, there's almost like a loading, or it starts playing, but there's a loading of something. What's happening in the background while it's loading? It's loading new intelligence?
Well, there's two things happening. One, we're downloading beats. So we're constantly updating our beat library. And just to repeat again, a beat is essentially 4 to 16 bars of music. So you can think of it as 4 beats all the way up to 16 beats. Amy is taking those, layering 8 layers of that content, figuring out how to match the pitches, how to match the rates, dynamically changing pitches and rates, and then mastering it in real time. So all those beats that come down are part of the library that Amy uses to create the music on the fly.
So that's interesting. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, because you talked about being able to train Amy with much less data than some other models or some other technologies. And I've heard about that recently, actually, an interview I did with Intel, and their data training sets are very small compared to the huge amounts of data that some people need. How were you able to do it?
Well, the technology is a little proprietary. I shouldn't say a little. It is proprietary right now, but I can talk to the general theme of it, and that's that instead of trying to teach Amy how to pattern itself around existing music, we teach Amy to learn basically listening to itself and comparing it to what it's played, or what an artist might have played, and that gives us the ability to see how close we are, and then have Amy sort of get better and better at patterning itself around a specific artist's style. That's also the mechanism that we're going to use to allow an artist to have their own style imparted into their artist pack.
Interesting. So Amy is learning from itself.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. What challenges or problems did you run into as you're building Amy?
Well, the first thing was finding the right team. And I've been the founder of multiple companies, and I have to tell you, I've learned luck is a big part of success in any startup. And I just happen to have an amazing team right now. They're all gifted musicians. They not only love music, but they're also computer scientists. Several of them have PhDs in generative music or topics related to generative music. And we love what we're doing. So I think the first step was finding a team. It took me a couple years really to find the team. The idea is not a year old, but the team is. That was the biggest first step. The second step was really getting Amy to sound good enough to release it. We had some early versions that played music, but we had a rule that until you hit play and you're delighted, we're not going to ship it. So we feel like we're there now. We've got a lot more to do. But that was really the first step, was getting to the point where an average person hitting play would go, wow, that is really good.
So either you weren't happy with a minimum viable product, or your minimum viable product was exactly that it sounded good on the first play. And I have to tell you, it's not the first AI-generated music startup that I've been pitched by, or the first technology that I've tried. And I recently tried something. It was, I think, only a month ago or something like that. And it was something where you could add a few elements and kind of customize it to what you're going to do. And we should get back to that, because maybe that's something that you'll do at some point. I don't know. But I could not make anything that I thought, hey, that's cool. I could not make anything that even approached what I could make in, let's say, GarageBand or something like that. And so I dumped it after a couple tries or something like that.
You bring up a really good point, control. We actually went back and forth on this quite a bit, and we realized that trying to give the user control was a bit of a cop-out. If we're not playing good music, then the knee-jerk reaction is, let's let the user try to make it into good music. So we decided to go very genre-specific and try to make the best application in this specific genre, so that people who are looking for this kind of music will love it. If you're looking for rock and roll, you're not going to like Amy. But we didn't try to make Amy give you a control that you could change it into rock and roll.
And you started in the right place. If you start with rock and roll, multiple instruments, much more challenging, right? A narrative structure to the music, which you don't necessarily have in electronica. So I think that was a good choice. Now, you've just launched. I think you launched a couple days ago. What's the response been so far?
Well, look, we didn't have grand expectations of having 100,000 downloads in the first day, but I think so far the reaction, the reception has been really good. We've had only 5-star reviews in the App Store. I can't honestly tell you if those are all friends and family. They might well be. But really, I think the big traction is going to come when we start releasing our artist packs, because one of the really effective aspects of the artists is they're really good at getting their fans excited. And if they're able to make money on Amy, which they will be, we hope that they'll be a really effective way for us to get users and adopting the platform.
So that's a super good segue. What's the monetization model?
Well, Amy's a subscription model. So you get 30 minutes free a day, and then if you want to get unlimited playback, it's $5.99 a month. And we'll release pricing for the artist marketplace later, but it'll be higher. But that'll give you access to all of our artists' content, and the artists share in the revenue stream that we generate, the subscription revenue stream that we generate.
Interesting, interesting. I had a thought about that monetization model, and I thought that it was, on the one hand, underpriced, and on the other hand, overpriced. I mean, because on the one hand, now, we're in COVID-19 times, right? And so I'm not in an office right now, but I have been in an office, and then somebody plays some music and it's on a Spotify list or something like that. And invariably, there's stuff that you cannot work to. You just can't work to. Either it's supposed to be playing in a club somewhere, or it's pop music for, I don't know, 13-year-olds or something like that. You can't work to. And I felt like I could really work to this music. It was something that was some music, which was nice, but it was something that kind of focused me rather than distracted me. And I thought, hey, for an office setting, assuming we ever get back into offices, this would be amazing. And you should you should price it more than that. And I thought for a personal, I don't know, maybe a bit much. Your thoughts?
Well, you brought up 2 points that are really smart. One is the difference between foreground and background music. So a lot of pop and songs are meant to be in the foreground, which is why I personally find it hard to study to them or to work to them. They're designed to grab your attention. We decided to go more with background music. Now, look, if you go up to Energy 10, it's a little hard to ignore, granted. But Energy 1 through 5, I think, is more in the background for you. The second point you brought up was more of a public setting or commercial settings for this. We have some exciting stuff to offer later this year around commercial use of Amy. And just to give you a hint, the same way that we can adapt Amy to your personal taste, we can adapt Amy to a commercial or a public setting. And we really feel like that whole industry is ripe for disruption right now. I mean, the way that music is pumped into public settings is archaic. Gestapos are sent out to police people, whether they're using it or not. Yes. I think we're going to make some really big contributions there.
So you make a great point. We didn't talk about that earlier, and I'll just bring this in. So I'm playing your music again, but there is an energy setting on there. I'll try and find it on my camera. There we go. And I can pump up that energy. And I think it'll take a little bit of time here, but I can pump up that energy to make, what happens to the music when I do that?
Well, there's composition changes. We change the compositional rules that guide us in terms of how we compose the music. And we also choose loops that are more suited for that energy level.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, cool. So what's the next challenge or problem that you need to solve? I mean, you talked about the artist network that you're bringing out, but in terms of the next AI type challenge that you need to solve, what is it?
Well, we really want to take the personalization to the next step. We really want this to be John's music and Edward's music, despite the fact that it's an app that we all can share. And the same thing applies for the artists. We want the artists to really get a platform that they're proud of. They don't feel like they're being compromised, and that their creativity is really flourishing on the platform. And that's all going to happen with AI. Interesting,
interesting, interesting. So project yourself out 3 to 5 years, something like that. Where do you see Amy.fm?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I've started a bunch of companies, and one thing I've yet to succeed at is creating a company that stands the test of time. And This company feels like it can. It's got a product that I think people will love. I think the monetization strategy works. I think the market is ready for it, both in terms of the artist communities that we can get engaged and the consumers. So in 3 to 5 years, I don't see us replacing pop or the labels creating music, but I do see us as another platform for both artists and consumers to appreciate music.
Very interesting. And I wonder also, and this would be, I think, kind of unprecedented ground, but if something like this could be available inside a Spotify or inside an Apple iTunes or something like that, that could be potentially super interesting as well.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we priced it lower than the Spotify's and Apple Music's, is because we want you to have this in addition to those services, and we would love to do partnerships with companies like that and have a channel on a Spotify or iTunes or Sonos or whatever.
And excellent. Well, Edward, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
For everybody else, thank you for joining us on the AI Show as well. Whatever platform you're on, hey, like, subscribe, share, comment. If you're listening on the podcast later on, please rate it, review it. That'd be a massive help. Until next time, this is John Koetsier with the AI Show.